Hi, good morning. Hi, everyone. Okay, I think I'm live. All right. Good. Yeah, we have 38 people joining here. Good. So, hi from Pacific Northwest. Welcome. All right. Okay. So, I've seen people have already sent me questions. If you could let me know where you guys are joining us from, that would be great. So we have people from Pacific Northwest, and I also have someone from China. Let's see, Illusions Stage is is from China. That's wonderful. Okay, from UK, Birmingham, excellent. Singapore, wow. India, Belgium, Philippines, excellent. The reason I switched the live stream from Saturday evening to morning is so that people in Europe can join us. I understand it's midnight in Australia, and so it could be a little bit late for them. Switzerland, excellent. All right, all right, okay. All right. I'm in the US on the East Coast, so it's morning, Saturday morning, 10 a.m. I'm not a morning person, so trying to get everything ready is a little bit rush for me this morning, but I'm glad that I'm here. Okay, excellent. So the way I'm going to do this is I will address a few questions that I didn't answer last time during the live. That was my first live, so I was a little inexperienced. There were super chat questions that I didn't address last time, but I want to address them today. And then you guys can continue to send me questions, and I'll get to them as I go on. We will talk about CCP politics today because that seems to be on a lot of people's mind. And also we'll talk about the Tangshan restaurant assault because it is related to the CCP politics. Okay, so let's see. Let's see what questions people have. Let me get to the questions that I see here first. I think Illusion Stage asked me about whether I believe the beating in Tangshan, the girls are still alive. I don't know. It's really hard to say. There were so much rumors or discussions on Chinese social media about the fact that the four girls or a number of them have already passed away, but the government came out to deny it. But judging from the fact that there's no interviews of the girls, no interviews of the girls' families, there's no interviews of eyewitnesses, or at least officially, make me very suspicious of the state that these girls are in right now. Uh, I tend not to believe what the government statements are, but whether or not these girls are alive is nobody knows. But I don't think they are. I don't think they're free um, from. I don't think they're free at all. That's what I can say. Why do you think reporters have been arrested for going to Tangshan to cover the story? It's very interesting. Let me just talk about the Tangshan case now. If you really look at this case, it's different from the chained woman, the mother of 8 that we saw earlier in the year, because that incident, the government throughout the whole time, or at least in the beginning stage of the incident or the viral event, the government was very quiet. They kept their mouths shut, while the netizens pushed the story and kept the interest high. But the Tangshan case, it's the opposite. The government somehow was behind this, and they pushed the story to, uh, to top of the list on the search list. And also, it came out because somebody released the video, the surveillance video from the restaurant. And if you really think about it, who could have released that video? The restaurant owner, the lady who owned the restaurant, obviously wasn't the one, because she came out crying, saying that her life was ruined from this whole episode. So she couldn't have been the one that who disclosed the video. So and the only party who could have possessed the surveillance video from the restaurant is the police. So then the question is, and then the only reason this whole assault became viral was after the surveillance video was released. So a critical question is, who released the video and why do they release the video? And also government owned state media have been promoting or reporting the story. The story was not censored. So that makes me think it's different. This incident is entirely different from the chained woman incident from the beginning of the year. And if you look at the result after how many weeks now? 2 weeks now? Yeah. The result of the Tangshan assault is that the government now officially can declare an anti-crime campaign nationwide, or anti-fake news campaign nationwide. This whole incident sort of gives them the reason or the excuse to do this anti-crime maneuver, or whatever you call that, campaign. And also the interesting outcome politically of this incident is that Xi Jinping was able to appoint one of his close allies to the position of the Minister of Public Security, right? 公关部部长, what do you call it? What do you say that in Chinese? Yeah, the Minister of Public Security, or the Chief of Police. It was Zhao Kezhi, was that the name? Yeah, it was a guy by the name of Zhao Kezhi, and now it's Wang Xiaohong, who was in charge of Xi Jinping's personal security when he was the head of the Fuzhou city, when he was in Fujian. So Wang is always considered a close ally of Xi Jinping from years ago, from decades ago. And there was so much talk about he will eventually replace the current or the previous minister to be heading the Public Security Bureau in China. And that's what happened. And this happened after the Tangshan restaurant assault. So the whole incident feels like there's some government force that's backing this, that made it a national news. The other question is, well, what's the factional war or the political struggle behind this? Was this started by Xi Jinping's enemy, or did his faction start this? I can't tell. But what I can see is the result isn't bad for him from his perspective. But of course, even though the government was backing the story, they still did what they did to prevent the reporters from covering the report. They interrogated reporters from other regions. They didn't they? Yeah, they arrested some reporters. I mean, working for the state-owned media, and I mean, the local government did everything they could to prevent the story from spreading. And I think that's purely the act of the local government, because politically, there's also the struggle between the central government and then the local government. The central government probably want to, dismantle the forces in the local government who isn't doing the right thing, and then the local government obviously want to protect themselves. So obviously there's a struggle between the local and then the central government, and so that's why you see there is such a fight between those responsible for the atrocity and then those who are trying to find out what's really happening in Tangshan. So there's just so much going on there. It's hard to say what exactly happened. but judging from what I have seen, this is what I can come up with. I hope this is helpful to you. Okay. All right. So last time, the law office, yeah, that's his name or her name, asked me this question: Are CCP's problems driven by factional infighting? CCP insiders are loyal to party above all. But does the Jiang Zemin faction hate Xi Jinping enough to risk everything, even the party, to take him down? It's hard to understand the kind of infighting between the CCP factions. From the Westerner's perspective, we probably think that you have to hate someone so much, right? You have to despise someone so much to be engaged in that kind of life and death battle with them. But from their perspective, it's not necessarily hate that drives them. I mean, it is hate, but it's part of the CCP system. From the very beginning, the Chinese Communist Party leaders or members have been engaged in this type of internal war or fighting with each other. And if they didn't fight, they could not have existed. I noticed that CCP thrives when there is a war, when there is a struggle, when there is conflict, or when there are conflicts. When the world is peaceful, they cannot thrive. So they thrive in that kind of situation. So even when there's no conflict, they would create conflicts. And that's just their nature. That's what feeds to their energy. That's their energy level. So when you ask me, is it hate that drives their fight? It's not the hate that we know of. It's they're just that kind. That's just their system. If you look at the history of the CCP during Mao Zedong's time, the internal fighting has been so vicious. I mean, Mao himself took down, I mean, basically not only took down, but virtually killed two of his successors. The first one is Liu Shaoqi, who was persecuted to death in prison. And he was Mao's first chosen successor and was the president of China. And his second successor, Lin Biao, whose succession was written into the Chinese constitution. And guess what? His plane was shot down, right? So that just shows you the kind of relations CCP leaders have amongst themselves. Now, during Deng Xiaoping's time, he changed it a little bit because at that time, the priority for the CCP was to grow the economy because they were so poor. The country was practically bankrupting. So the focus was the economy. And so Deng Xiaoping, and also there was no true paramount leader to the level of Mao Zedong. So Deng Xiaoping kind of set the rule with the other leaders. That is, we could fight, but there's no killing. So there's during the 20 years from the time that Deng Xiaoping took power to the time he died, which was in 1997, around the 20 years or about 20 years, the focus for CCP is on the economy, making money. And because they were so engrossed in making money, they sort of didn't really fight with each other, or at least didn't fight to the level they used to. But then after Deng Xiaoping died, and then when that was during Jiang Zemin's time and later Hu Jintao's time, the struggle amongst the CCP factions, went beyond just power struggle because there was also money involved, right? There was so much money on the table, and so whether this is your money, my money, so the struggle went beyond just power struggle, and now there's money, so that kind of fighting resumed. And by the time Xi Jinping came on board, it's just getting out of control. So I want to show you that the fighting is not as a result of hate of each other. That's just the nature of CCP. Okay. All right. Sorry. Okay, so I got a super question. Do you know the economic situation of China so much so that PRC Chinese can only withdraw renminbi 1,000 each time? Yes, I've heard of that. Uh, there are so many incidences where people don't trust their online banking. I shouldn't say online. You know how Chinese don't use cash? They pay everything online through like WeChat Pay. Everything is digital. And then the incidents in Henan where people can take out money from banks or people don't see the money in their banks, and that causes great fear amongst people. So people have lined up outside banks to get cash, and so the bank has limited 1,000 yuan per day for daily withdrawal, and that caused great distress because if you're a business person or if you're just someone who, I mean, 1,000 yuan is not a lot of money in China, so that's just very distressful. But that just shows you the problem the banking system has. Uh, okay, so all right, so I answered that question. What, in your opinion, would it take for the people of China to overthrow the CCP and free themselves from these thugs, if even possible? That's a big question. Hopefully, I'll get to that. There's no simple answers to that, but hopefully we will come up with some good discussion points together. Okay, let me go back to the question I was trying to where was that? Oh, from Jackson Dunn. Hello, Lei. I don't know if you heard of Peter Zayan. Did I pronounce the name right? But he believes that CCP will cease to exist in the next decade due to fertility and the Chinese debt crisis. Is this wishful thinking? Yeah, this sort of answered the question that Alex asked. I think debt crisis and fertility alone, I mean, if you have low fertility, your population would decrease and China just become a smaller country. Is that itself is not going to be so threatening to the CCP, right? Debt crisis is an economic crisis. CCP is not afraid of economic problems because it doesn't care. It does not care if its people live poor. If you look at Chinese history during the Great Famines in the 1950s, from 1959 to 1961, I mean, 50 million people died from hunger, but the regime did not collapse. If you look at Cultural Revolution, the 10 years was crazy. Tens of millions of people died, but the regime did not collapse because the CCP does not fear economic disaster because it's not afraid to let its people to live poorly. So therefore, these things does not threaten them. What it does fear is its political instability. So I think the factional war, the political instability is more threatening than the economic crisis to CCP. I don't think the CCP will last that long. Everybody can see that it's already trapped in a dead end. And people know that it's not sustainable, but we should not neglect the threat just because we know it's coming to an end. Because when it realizes that it's going to die or it's going to be phased out, it can be more threatening and more dangerous. Okay, I have a super chat question. Do you believe China would join with Russia to attack Lithuania somehow, and how might they do it? China's relation with Russia is very complex. Somebody just asked me the question. I think I saw it somewhere, which is kind of related to your question, Max. I don't know how to say this. Max, how do you say your name? Everyone has so creative name. I have such short name, which made it easier for you. Lei, Lei. Okay, so the question is kind of related to this. The question is between export to the West and China's support to Russia, which one is more important to China? I think China will not risk its relations with the West or its exports to the Western markets in order to support Russia. However, it will support Russia underhandedly, uh, but but it will not do it in a way that it would jeopardize its relations with the West. If you look at the recent news, Xi Jinping sent a special envoy to Europe. His name is what's his name? Wu Hongbo, for a 3-week visit to Europe to amend relations with the EU because they figure that they want to maintain a good relations with Europe while the relation with the US is still at loggerhead. So and Mr. Wu is a very charismatic diplomat, and he has been making apologies or subtle apologies in Europe and basically acknowledged that, yeah, we've made mistakes, but we aren't as bad as you thought. So if you look at that effort, that tells you that the CCP desperately want to maintain a normal trade relations with the West and particularly the EU. So they're not going to risk that with its relations with Russia. So that's my answer. Thank you, everyone. Uh, okay, what do you think of the recent road change of Le Yuchen to Deputy Director of Commerce? Do you think that this implies CCP defocusing on Russia and focus more on relations with the US? Yes. Yes, he is. I think he was the one, Le was the one who made the comment that China's relations with Russia is like sky is the limit. Remember, he said that sky is the limit in terms of Russia-China relations. So that comment really caused Xi Jinping a lot of trouble, and I think I heard that that's the reason he's demoted. Okay, let's see. Oh, so many questions. How long would it take for China to reclaim the Far East from Russia as it is weakened by Ukraine war? That's a tough question. I don't have an answer right now, but I think we should keep that in our mind. I don't have anything right now to really answer that question, but I'll get to it at some point. Okay. Greeting from El Chiapu. I don't know how to say your name. I'm terrible at pronouncing names. I'm so lucky that my parents give me a simple name, Lei. Okay. Greeting from Beijing. Okay, great. Leaving China soon after 10 years. Well, good, good. So many foreigners left already, and it's my turn now. Okay, living without VPN soon. Yeah, there's a word. I made a video about it. It's called runology or 润学, right? Run. The word run, R-U-N, is pronounced run in Chinese, and so Chinese turned it into a new viral word. I think everyone is trying to get out, whether it's Western or Chinese. Anyone with a little bit of money or with some kind of a connection to the West is trying to get out. So run while you can. Okay. Can we trust the yuan? Can we trust the yuan? I don't want to say yes or no. My question is, why do you ask that question? Is that because you have a lot of yuan in your possession and you don't know what to do with it? Or you want to invest in yuan? If I have a lot of yuan, I would spend it, right? I wouldn't hold it. But if you just have a small amount of yuan, it doesn't matter if you leave some. But if I have to choose a currency to invest in, I wouldn't invest in yuan. How many aircraft carriers do you think China will build? I do not know. I do not know that question. But I'll look into that for you. Okay. All right. So let me get back to some of the questions from Super Chats from last time. From Dave M. China's claims to Taiwan are the only real deterrent for Taiwan's recognition by the UN, affecting recognition of its own boundaries, sovereignty, and recognition by other countries. Any ideas how can we turn this around? That's a big question. If I can answer that, I think we'll solve half of the problems today, right? So it's not an easy question. What I can say is the US is very carefully trying to address this. I mean, its strategy has been strategic ambiguity by acknowledging, the one China policy on one hand, but on the other hand, it's quietly uh, helping Taiwan or helping Taiwan uh, to be more, how to say, to have more presence in the international community or on the global stage. And what's interesting is the one China policy, China and US always have this debate. Oh, they have this semantic difference in their one China policy. The US use the words one China policy, whereas China stick to the one China principle. But there's a big difference between one China principle and one China policy because a principle does not change, but a policy can change. So the US is very smart by saying that we have a one China policy, but what is one China policy, right? So that's really a big, how to say, uh, that's really the main focal point of disagreement between the US and China. Uh, yeah, so when it comes to the one China policy. But that's a big question, Dave. I don't have a clear answer right now, but I think the whole world is quietly but adamantly helping Taiwan to be more established in the international, on the global stage without, on the surface, violating China's one China policy. Okay, let's see. Do I have any other questions? Yeah, so the one China, somebody said China has never ruled Taiwan. I mean, the one China policy, it doesn't say who's going to rule China, right? So the one China policy is to say we just recognize this one China, but we didn't say, well, who's going to rule China? All right, here's a question. What's the extent of CCP's influence operations in the USA? Again, that's a big question. I'll have to make 5 videos to cover that topic. But I'll use one example just to show you that uh, China's influence in the US didn't happen overnight. It slowly built up over 20 to 30 years without us being aware. So their influence is not going to go away overnight either. I'll just use the example of the Confucius Institute. On June 21st, there was a forum held by the National Association of Scholars in Washington, D.C., to discuss the influence, the post-Confucius Institute, the influence on the U.S. higher education in the post-Confucius Institute era. And there's a researcher by the name of Rachel Peterson. I think she said, according to her, she said that the influence, the Chinese government has changed their strategy. So instead of using Confucius Institute, or instead of using that name, they're just renaming it to something else. But the collaboration or the intent to engage American higher education institutions is still there. And the strategy the CCP is using is called outflank approach. So, for example, the the first Confucius Institute was established in 2005, and between 2006 to 2019, so during about the 14 years, China spent about, on the record, $160 million and established 117 Confucius Institute. I think it's 117. About 100, maybe 118 Confucius Institute. And by April this year, it's reduced to 17. But that doesn't mean that they're gone, or that doesn't mean that the influence is eradicated. According to the National Association of Scholars, there are still 28 higher education institutes that are using similar projects like the Confucius Institute, and 58 of them are still collaborating or have a close relations with the organization that sponsored the Confucius Institute. And there are 5 Confucius Institute in the US that have been transferred from the Higher Education Institute to other organizations. So they still exist. And so for example, for Western Michigan University, the day after the Confucius Institute was closed, the school, Western Michigan University, established collaboration with Peking Language University to collaborate on Chinese language. It's a language and culture collaboration program. Now, this is very tricky. A lot of you ask me how, what's the best way to learn Chinese language? There's a lot of people want to learn Chinese. I must say, a significant amount of those programs available in the US are mainland Chinese programs. And teaching Chinese is inseparable from teaching Chinese culture. And the definition of Chinese culture has been, to some extent, changed by the CCP. So when you learn Chinese language, you inevitably are accepting the CCP's propaganda in its, through its definition of culture. So I would highly recommend to stay away from any language exchange program or culture exchange program with the CCP, because it's not for language, it's not for culture exchange. It's really to brainwash our students and people in the West who are interested in learning Chinese with their propaganda, with their agenda. So instead of calling it Confucius Institute, they're just calling it language exchange programs. I would choose programs offered by Taiwan if you really want to learn Chinese. I found that traditional Chinese culture is well preserved in Taiwan, or even in other Chinese-speaking regions outside mainland China. All right, let me see. Do I have any questions? Ideology of Xi will only put CCP in danger. I don't think Xi Jinping has any ideology. His ideology is the CCP's ideology. See, CCP leaders are smaller than the CCP organization. The organization itself, the party itself, is bigger than any leader. It's different from the Western understanding is, oh, you have a formidable leader. The leader make these decisions, and therefore you have to follow the leaders, right? If you don't like the leaders, get rid of him, choose another leader. CCP doesn't work like that. The leader is not as significant as the party itself. Everything is controlled by the party. And so Xi Jinping doesn't have an ideology of itself. He must follow the ideology of the party. That's why so many of CCP's leaders have been persecuted throughout history. If you look at the history of CCP, more than half of its leaders are being persecuted. Some were killed. So if the leaders are bigger than the party, that would not have happened. So Xi Jinping doesn't have any ideology. It's the party, but the party's ideology is very deceptive. It can change. it could constantly change because it's always embroiled in the existential crisis, and so it's very adapting. That's too nice of a word to use. So it always changes its position. It doesn't have any principle. It's just to survive. Um, and then it could choose a leader that fits its need for the time being. And if the leader doesn't serve its purpose, it could have another leader. So that's what I want to say. The Xi Jinping thought is just a tool for him to hold on to his power. I don't even think he believes in that. It's just a state apparatus, one of those tools that CCP uses to legitimize its control, to help Xi Jinping legitimize his control. Okay. All right. So I think I talk about the Confucius Institute. Oh, I also want to mention that in 2020, in the year 2020, during the last leg of the Trump administration, the U.S. government issued a policy requiring primary, secondary, and higher education institutions to disclose all contracts and agreement with the Confucius Institute. And then schools that fail to disclose this would lose their accreditation for educational exchange programs. I think the Biden administration removed this policy, but I would highly suggest that they put it back because I think they should disclose any agreement they have with the Chinese, not just the Confucius Institute, but other institutions as well. Okay. Okay. All right. So let's see what other. Let me talk about the CCP politics because that's what's happening right now in China, right? So we heard that China banned Tesla in Qinhuangdao near the Beidaihe area for 2 months, and it's because the Beidaihe summer retreat is coming up. It's the annual summer retreat for the CCP leaders. Beidaihe is the beach region for the wealthy Chinese before the CCP took power. It was actually established by Westerners. Western industrialists in the 1930s. There were many Western villas built in the 1930s and 40s during that time. And when the CCP came to power, they, of course, took over the villas and made it for their own use and enjoyment. So every summer, the top CCP brass go to the Beidaihe region and have a summer retreat. And that's where a lot of these informal gatherings took place, and a lot of these decisions were made behind closed doors in these informal gatherings. That's also the only time when the CCP elders, the retired CCP leaders, can exercise their influence and power and get involved in politics. So it's a very important event leading up to the CCP's 20th National Congress in the fall. A lot of people are already talking about that. So the fact that the CCP banned Tesla for 2 months in the Beidaihe area tells you how nervous they are about the summer gathering. And the reason they banned Tesla is because Tesla has a lot of cameras, right? So they are afraid that these cameras are collecting pictures or cars, license plates, who knows? So they banned Tesla cars in the area. But let's talk about 2 important moves by Xi Jinping to get himself ready for the summer retreat. The first is what you already know if you follow China news. I think it was a couple of weeks ago, the CCP issued a regulation that forbade retired CCP leaders to, what do you say that in Chinese? 妄议中央. In English, it's like criticize or discuss the central leadership, discuss the central government without good intention. Shall we say it that way? That's the literal translation. So there's a policy out there that formally forbid the CCP, the retired leaders, from discussing the current leadership with ill intentions. Okay, so that's a very daring move by Xi Jinping, basically, to order his predecessors to stop talking about what he's doing. That's a move by him. And recently, I think it was a couple of days ago, right? Is it a couple of days ago? That's a couple of days ago. He issued another policy. What is it called? I want to get the exact name. I have written it down. Okay, yeah. He issued a new regulation that forbade officials from, like, an upper middle level of CCP officials, from being involved in businesses. And not only the leaders cannot be involved in businesses, but also their children, their spouse, or the spouse of their children are not allowed in private businesses. And he said, if you are, here's what's going to happen. Yeah. Okay, this is it. If any officials violate this policy, this is 4 ways we'll deal with you. Number 1, okay, no. This is yeah, this okay. So first of all, you should all quit any private business that you were involved in. And for any officials who are involved in business dealings, you need to quit your current job, and your position will be adjusted accordingly. And if you are not willing to quit the business involvement, then we will not promote you. And the 4th, if you exercise a false exit, meaning you do some kind of an invisible shareholding by someone else, then we will investigate you. So that's what the policy said. Now, if you really look at this, there are several interesting things about this. First, he only dealt with the direct families of the leaders, right? He only talked about your spouse and your children and the spouse of your children. He didn't deal with the siblings of the leaders. So in other words, your brothers, sisters can still be involved in multi-billion-dollar businesses. And so that still sort of give a leeway to some of the CCP leaders. He's saying that just your direct family cannot be involved in business. Some people say, well, it's because Xi Jinping's own siblings, some of them are involved in business. Maybe he felt that he can't really tell his brothers and sisters and, like, sell your business. So there's still some leeway left there. And then the punishment, or the way he's going to deal with it, is not investigation. He's using the political appointment as a tool. So he's saying that if you're involved in business, then I'm not going to appoint you. I'm not going to put you in key positions. So this is actually a tool, a weapon that Xi Jinping has devised to deal with the upcoming battle at Beidaihe. So he's going to use all the business involvements of his political enemies to say, no, I can't put you in that position, or I can't put your allies in that position because look, he's involved in all these businesses, or his children are involved in these businesses. So it's clearly a plan that he has devised to. Oh, thank you. Someone just sent me $20. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. You are amazing. I don't think I'm amazing. I think you guys are. Thank you so much. All right. So what was that? Yeah. So I think he's just saying, okay, I'm going to use all your business involvement to get back at you. Uh, so I think that's what will happen. In terms of the policy, it's not new. The CCP has issued similar policies for like 9 times prior to this. I think the first time CCP issued like a non-business affiliation policy was in 1984, and they have been issuing similar policies, regulations like in the past decades 8 times. This is the number 9. But I think this time, I think Mr. Xi will seriously use it, against his political enemy. What else? Let me see. Let's see. Hello from Singapore. Have been watching your videos since the Battle of Lake Changjin review. Wow. Yeah, so that was last year. Was that last year? I think that's last year. Last summer. I don't remember. I've made so many videos. Sometimes it's a big blur in my head. I only remember the recent videos I've made. I don't even remember when I made what. Okay, thank you. Well, somebody sent me $5, John. Thank you. Thank you. American dream equals Chinese dream. Both are. I think human beings, we all want the same thing. We all want peace, prosperity, and good health. There's no difference. But very sadly, it's very hard for Chinese to have that. I mean, relatively speaking. I mean, our world is all changed, but I think it's just the situation in China is worse, much worse than where we are now. Okay, I have a question from Sage News Live. If you ever want to do an interview, I would love to have you on my show. Okay, all right. I haven't got time to do any interviews because all my research and work writing script pretty much took up all my time. I'll consider that, but so far I have been very focused on what I do because I feel like this is where I can contribute the most. Okay. Did I miss anything? Did I miss any questions? Okay. So, well, but thank you for the invitation. Most human beings want that, but the few sociopaths in charge crave power or money. Yes. Well, it all comes down to power and money. How much will China continue to support North Korea as North Korea continues to increase its weapon testing? The communist siblings, like North Korea, China, and former Soviet Union, have been fighting always amongst themselves. I think the leaders of North Korea and China don't really see eye to eye. They don't trust each other at all. They're just using each other. I think everything is done from their own practical needs. Don't ever think that the CCP will support someone because it wants to support you. It's because it has a need. It wants something from you. So, okay, I have a question from Illusion Stage. Will China do a real job in helping those in poverty, or would it all be for a surface look? Are you talking about the Chinese in China? I don't think so. I think the poor Chinese in China, I mean, the people are getting poorer and poorer. So it's incapable of helping those who live in poverty, even if it wants to. And I don't even think it wants to. And if it wants to, then why not just do something to help the poor people who lost their money in the village bank scandal. I mean, the government, these bank accounts are insured by government, right? They are bank accounts, but the government is playing with its law to say that it's not the government's responsibilities. You guys just have bad luck because you put your money with a scammer who took your money and ran away. It's the act of a bad a criminal, and the bank is not liable for that. But how could that be? I mean, in the free world, in the Western, in a democratic world, that you can't say the bank is irresponsible. The bank is obviously responsible. Uh, so if it really wants to take care of its people, it should do something, but it's not. So that just shows you it's not going to take care of its people. Um, they try to say people are stupid for investing without educating the populace. Well, if you look at the Henan, the bank fraud, yeah, the government is saying that, well, those are not legitimate bank accounts. They are just uh, illegitimate. How do I say this word? Illegitimate. I can't even say a word properly today. They're not real business. They're not real bank account. Uh, so so they blame everything on the criminal. And then as the depositor tried to go to the government to protest, they use the health code, right? The red health code to control them, to say you can't leave your house. So they turned their health code to red, and there were like 1,300 people who are barred from leaving their home because of their health code turned red. And then that caused an uproar on the internet. And then the government punished 5 government officials to say, oh, you shouldn't do this. They punished 5 officials in the I think it's the municipal government, to say these people did the wrong thing by turning the people's health code red. So they punished 5 officials. But if you look at who those 5 officials are, none of them work in the banking industry, or none of them are in the position related to banking or banking regulatory administration. So if you really think about it, that's really strange. Now, how could 5 local government officials all of a sudden decided to turn these bank customers' health code red if they didn't work with someone working for the banks, right? They must have colluded with someone working in the bank to know whose health code they need to turn red. So who are those people working in the bank that provide the customer information to these officials? And why those people are not punished? I mean, that's such a simple question, but so okay. All right. Let's see. Do I have any other questions? What's your opinion on the Tangshan assault? Why are some Chinese men that mean? I would even call them men. I think they're beasts. I think they are criminals. It's very sad. They say for Chinese to be a Chinese woman is hard. First, the chances for you to be born is small, because if you're a female fetus, you're likely aborted before you were even born. And then when you're born, you're subject to poisonous baby formula, right? So for you to grow up healthy is hard. And then because of the gender disparity, young women face higher chances of abduction or being sold. And then now you have you see all these cases where women are being beat up randomly by men. I mean, I just, you think there are fewer women in China, so they should be like cherished like a rare, uh, like a rarity, but they're not. They're being assaulted. So it's just so sad. Let's see. All right, I have questions. Poisonous baby formula? Yes, I mean but both male and female babies are subject to that. That's not unique just to female babies. But I'm just saying it's not easy to raise a kid in China at all. It's so expensive. And then so for any parents to have lost your child, it's just so sad because the Chinese parents have to do so much to raise a child. And then if you lose your daughter or your son, it's just very, very sad. I mean, for any parent to lose their child is sad. All right. I don't want to drag on this live for too long, but I want to say this about the CCP politics. So someone asked the question, so what's the likelihood of Xi Jinping getting his third term this fall? People ask me, when is the 20th National Congress? I don't think there's a fixed date set yet. It's usually at the end of October or beginning of November. And it alternates. So we haven't seen a set date yet. So what's the likelihood of him, succeeding himself, right? I think it's the chances for him to get his third term is higher than him not getting it. And the reason is that he is still the most powerful leader within the CCP. He controls the military. And the fact that he put one of his close allies, oh, thank you, I have a $10 donation, thank you, one of 19. Okay, great, great. You guys have so creative names. Excellent. The fact that, yeah, he put one of his close allies to be heading the Public Security Bureau means that he now has full control over what people call 刀把子. This people call, the CCP calls the military the gun, 枪杆子, and then the propaganda department the pen, and then the public security the knife. So now he has control over the knife, and then the gun, right, the military, and then his 网信办, the organization that he established, the organization that supervises the internet, is his, I think, his propaganda tool to control the internet. And that's almighty because he's using big data to do surveillance, not just on the Chinese people, but also, think about it, also on the Chinese leaders themselves, right? Basically, he has big data. He has data on everyone, including his political enemies. So he knows, oh, you guys have been gathering. You guys have been talking about me. You guys, so he knows what everyone is up to, including his political enemies. So that make him very powerful. That's the reason why he's daring, or he dares to put out this policy to forbid the retired leaders to not criticize and discuss his policy, because he's telling them, look, I know what you guys are talking about. I know what you guys are doing because I have big data. So with that, I think he's still the most powerful leader amongst all the factions. There will be ugly fights, but I think the chances for him to succeed is much higher than him not to. But who knows? It's there's always a chance that something extraordinary happens. So, what are your thoughts on the bank runs that's happening in China? I kind of discussed that already. The CCP is not afraid of economic crisis. It has a banking crisis. I mean, if you look at it from the Western perspective, it's like the whole system is collapsing. Uh, you have thousands or tens of thousands or even millions of depositors, people who lost their money, who are going to the streets to protest. But the CCP is not afraid because it controls, like I said, the gun, the knife, the pen. It has all these state apparatus to tightly control everyone. So you can't do anything. Think about all these people who spend their life saving to buy a real estate and they don't even see a home. I mean, that could not have happened in any democratic world. I mean, that's just people are not going to be put up with it. But for the past years, so people protest a little bit and then they die down, right? People live in these 烂尾楼, what do you call that? Never finished home without windows and without doors, without electricity and water, and they just live there. And then they have no money, and they have to pay mortgage. So CCP is not afraid of economic distress because it has dealt with it many times before. It's afraid of its political struggle. It will change its face from time to time, to engage the West a little bit if it has become too harsh or too hardcore. It will soften a little bit to gain your trust, to make some friends, to say, oh, I'm not that bad. And then, continue the business dealings, continue to get your money to survive. And then once it gets strong, once it feels like it's in the position to do what it wants, it will go ahead with its own agenda. That's just how it has been for all these years. So people need to understand the nature of CCP, the nature of the system. We cannot look at it from our own perspective, from how a Western society or a Western government is run. Because if we always look at them from our perspective, from our rationing or from our reasons, we will most likely misjudge the regime. Okay? Do you think the China real estate problem is finally busting? Well, it has been for the past. When was the year that Xi Jinping declared that real estate is for houses are for living, it's not for speculating? It has been a couple of years. The real estate bubble is busting, but the government, CCP, is trying to slow down its impact. It's trying to localize its impact, so it's not as dramatic as it would have been. So, yeah, it's just trying to localize the pain, trying to slow down rather than have a big bubble busting right away, and it tries to break it up into smaller bubbles and try to slow it down a little bit. So, and when it really busts, it will use its military and state security to control social unrest. Why CCP has not contributed material to Russian efforts in Ukraine? How do we know they have not? Right? We don't know. Okay. It seems like Xi has all the cards in his hands. People can't even think about scenarios where we wouldn't get a third term. Not necessarily, because he has never felt so threatened as he has been lately. I mean, if you look at all the rumors about him getting cancer, getting brain aneurysms, he's stepping down all of that. And, his enemies are not just his political opponents inside China. I mean, there's so much there's a force outside China that's working with his enemies within the CCP to get him to remove him. So, and that has never happened in the history of CCP before. So the opponents is so formidable that no CCP leader before him has ever seen it. So it is it is very scary and threatening. But unfortunately, the ones who will pay a price are the Chinese people. That's very sad, and the Chinese economy. All right, I got a question. What is your opinion on the future of Hong Kong as an international city? It's very sad. In my last couple of videos, I talk about the financial Hong Kong's role as a global financial center is diminishing. People are moving to Singapore, and people are just leaving Hong Kong more and more. But China, the CCP is trying to rescue Hong Kong out of the dire situation it has got itself in. Not Hong Kong, but the CCP had got Hong Kong in. So I addressed that in my last couple of videos. One of the things I think the CCP is trying to do is trying to attract Western capitals into the Hong Kong stock market. Um, it's also I'm surprised my last video is not getting a lot of views. I think it's one of the most important videos that I've made about how the CCP is trying to take advantage of the U.S. bearish market to boost its market in Hong Kong. And I think it's doing everything it can to hold on to Hong Kong. But I've also seen other people talking about the role Hong Kong will play, the military role Hong Kong will play in the event of an attack to Taiwan. Hong Kong will play an important role because of its vicinity to Taiwan. So we will discuss the role of Hong Kong in the future. That's a very important question. Yeah. Oh, I have $100 from Gabrielle. Thank you so much, Gabrielle. Thank you. I truly appreciate it. Thank you. I watched your last video. Great content. Thank you. Yes. Why don't you do collaboration with other China channels? For example, Laowai 86. This will give you more exposure you deserve. I have not really got the time to do like outreach. You guys can tell I am a one woman. Somebody said this is a one woman band. It is true. I pretty much do all research and script writing myself. And if people approach me, I will talk to them. But I think people are watching me. I think some of the social some of them watch me. They get tips from me. So it's good if I could be a content provider to other China channel. China vloggers. It's great, So I'm not selfish in that way to just keep this to myself. But if they reach out to me, I'm not gonna object to that. But I do have very limited time right now with my research. Yeah, I'm open to the idea. I'm open. Yeah, I think in the next phase, I do want to do some collaborations. Okay, go on other channels. Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah, they're all good. I don't have the time to watch them, but I think they're all doing great work. And they start way ahead of me. I just think a lot of their contents are done from a Westerner's perspective. The reason I'm doing this is I offer a Chinese perspective. I lived in China. I speak Chinese. I know how the CCP think, or how the people in the CCP system think. So I think I offer a very unique perspective. And I realize there are not a lot of Chinese like myself who are doing this. So that's why I step forward and do it. And they offer a perspective from a Westerner's perspective, Westerners who are very familiar with China, who have lived in China, who are familiar with Chinese culture or Chinese language. But so our perspectives are different. Yeah. Okay. Hopefully that's helpful. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Uh, and also I try to be concise and straight to the point. I understand, I truly appreciate your time because I don't want to waste people's time by go on and on. I just try to, present all the facts in one video, with as little time as I can, so you guys get the whole story within 10 minutes. And that's my goal. I don't want to turn it into a 20-minute, 30-minute video and by going on and on. I think that's not very respectful to your time. Okay. Your thoughts on Hong Kong transition under the new CEO, John Lewis? Isn't he a police chief? So by having a police chief run Hong Kong, it's going to be what, a police state or police city state? So, all right. Okay, so let's see. You are the only channel with this kind of content. Really appreciate it. Well, thank you. Thank you. All right. Did I cover all the contents? I pretty much covered, I think, what I want to cover, and I don't see any more questions come on. Give me your feedback. I want to do this more often. I certainly don't want to hold you guys for too long. I really think spending an hour with me on a Saturday morning is already too gracious of you. So I would like to wrap it up if I don't get any other questions. Oh, from Manila, excellent. Is there a real threat to Australia from CCP? I think there's a threat everywhere, not just Australia, right? Its global ambition is threatening almost all of us, right? Its global agenda is threatening, no matter where you are. Do a live stream every day. Okay, so I would do this more often. Definitely, I would do this more often. I want to do it shorter, probably like around an hour, but I would do this more often. Okay, from NYC, excellent. Okay. Yeah, I know Winston and Matt both are fluent in Chinese and lived in China. Yes, and they're doing great. I really admire their work. So, all right. So, would China attack Southeast countries like Japan did during? I don't know that now. I think that's I will look into that. Okay. So I will say that's it for today. How about that? It's late in Australia and it's getting to dinner time. It's getting to dinner time I don't know what time is in Europe. It's evening time. Yeah, it's dinner time. I lost track. And so I thank you very much for joining me. Okay. All right. We want more live. Okay, I'll definitely do this more often. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. I really hate to say goodbye, but we'll do this more often. Definitely do this more often. Give me your comments and feedback. All righty. Bye. Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye.